They mocked her worn jacket, until a general saw the patch and stood frozen. The rain came down hard that afternoon, soaking through the cracked pavements of a small city bus terminal. Commuters huddled beneath the leaking roof, tapping at their phones, impatiently watching the clock. Amid them stood an older woman, her hands buried deep in the pockets of a faded olive-green jacket. The fabric was frayed at the sleeves, its color dulled with time, but on the shoulder gleamed a single, weathered patch, one that looked too official for a thrift store find. Most people didn't notice her. Those who did, whispered, "Look at that old coat," a young man smirked to his friend. "Trying to look like a soldier or something." His friend laughed. "Yeah, probably got it from a yard sale. Who wears that kind of stuff anymore?" The woman said nothing. She simply shifted her weight, tightening her grip on the strap of her worn satchel. Her hair, streaked with silver, clung to her face, and her shoes, scuffed and wet, looked like they'd walked more miles than most of those kids had ever driven. But her eyes were steady. Inside the terminal cafe, the same woman sat quietly with a cup of cheap coffee, steam rising into her tired face. The sound of laughter and chatter filled the room, students, workers, travelers, yet she remained alone in the corner, her back straight, her gaze on the rain outside. A few tables away, the same two young men sat with a small group. They kept glancing at her jacket, the patch that caught the dim light every now and then. One of them finally muttered loud enough to be heard, "Man, it's disrespectful to wear military stuff if you never served. That patch, that's from some special unit, right?" The woman turned her head slightly, her calm eyes meeting theirs. There was no anger in them, no defense. Just a silence that said more than any argument could. Then she went back to her coffee. Moments later, the door opened, and in walked a tall man in uniform, a two-star general. His presence shifted the air. Conversations paused, phones lowered. Even the staff straightened. He scanned the cafe briefly, until his eyes fell on the woman in the corner. And suddenly, he froze. The general's jaw went slack. The cup in his hand trembled slightly. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, he walked straight toward the woman's table, not with the pride of an officer, but the reverence of a man standing before something sacred. When he reached her, he stopped, his voice low and respectful. "Ma'am, may I ask your name?" The young men nearby exchanged confused glances. The woman looked up slowly, her lips curving in the faintest smile. "It's been a while, General," she said softly. "Didn't think anyone would recognize the 47th Recon patch anymore." The general blinked, and then, to everyone's astonishment, he saluted her. Not casually, not out of habit, but sharply, perfectly, as one does for a superior. The cafe went silent. Whispers spread like wildfire. The young men who had mocked her were frozen in their seats, pale-faced. One of them mouthed, 47th Recon. The general spoke again, his voice breaking slightly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, turning to the room, "this woman is Colonel Evelyn Parker, the first field commander to lead the 47th Recon Unit in Operation Desert Wind. She saved my entire team, and 50 civilians, when our convoy was ambushed 20 years ago." Gasps rippled through the cafe. The woman, Evelyn, sat still, her gaze falling to her cup, her fingers trembling slightly. "You shouldn't embarrass yourself like that, sir," she said quietly. "Those days are long gone." But the general shook his head. "Not for us. Not for the people who are alive. Because of you." He turned to the others, voice firm. "She's the reason I'm standing here today. She was decorated with the Silver Star, and she never took credit. She disappeared after retirement, helping veterans recover from trauma. She never once came to a ceremony. And yet, here she sits, still wearing that same jacket." Evelyn gave a faint, wistful laugh. "Guess I never learned how to let go." The silence in the cafe grew heavy, the kind that carried respect. The same boys who had mocked her now looked down at their shoes, shame burning in their faces. One of them whispered an apology, voice cracking. She didn't scold them. She simply smiled. "You didn't know," she said softly. "And that's all right. Just remember, the people who wear these patches, they don't always make it home. And the ones who do, well, they carry more than just fabric." The general nodded. "You taught us that, ma'am." Then, turning to the cafe owner, he said, "Her bill's on me. For life, if I can help it." The old woman's eyes filled with quiet tears. That's too much. No, Colonel, he said gently. It's not enough. That night, when Evelyn stepped back into the rain, her jacket soaked once more, something was different. Strangers nodded at her as she passed. A young man opened the door for her, his voice sincere. Thank you for your service, ma'am. She paused, looking at him, the same boy who had laughed earlier. His eyes were filled with regret, but also something new, respect. Evelyn nodded, then smiled faintly. You're welcome, son. Take care of this country for us, will you? He swallowed hard and nodded. As she disappeared into the mist, the general watched from the cafe window. He whispered to himself, they'll never understand what you gave, Colonel. But maybe tonight, they'll learn to see. Inspiration. Sometimes, the strongest heroes are the quiet ones, the ones who carry their battles not on their sleeves, but in their hearts. Respect doesn't come from medals or rank, but from the courage to keep going when the world forgets what you've done. And for those who mock what they don't understand, there's always a story behind every worn jacket.